At some point, I think every student thinks about what to do after college, and for a lot of students, it's thinking about going to grad school. Let's talk about it.
I'm Jupe, that's Hempy. Welcome back to another episode of ByteSized Talks.
All right, so graduate school, it's a big thing to consider when you're going into your senior year, your last year of college. Um, it is fundamentally different in certain senses from your undergrad. So let's talk about the different types of grad school. First, there's programs uh, like that are non like research based, and that's going to be more like whether you're going to law school or going to become a doctor, going to medical school. Those are different types of graduate programs. The ones I can talk about personally, from my personal experience and experience from my friends and such, is people going into like STEM grad school. Okay, so before I get to mine, uh, Julian, what was your big reason for not going to grad school or like following undergrad? Like, what led you to pursue industry? I guess.
I think part of it was I was kind of just drained from school and I was just ready to get out there and start making money instead of living as a college student, which was fucking ramen and $5 chicken. So it was it was just I was tired of it. And that's kind of what led me to saying, well, I want to get into the real world and start working again.
Okay. I think another instance that people get to when they're at the end of the end of their senior year, their final year of college, is not knowing what they're gonna do moving forward. Oh,
Yeah.
God, I don't know if I want to get into this or that. And graduate school seems like the next logical step, especially for the students I call the linear track students. Students who, came, had no, just didn't take any time off between high school and their freshman year, finished in 4 or 5 years, and were like, well, I've been doing school and I can do more school. And I think I'll do that because more degrees would be better. Right.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's the wrong perspective to have with most degrees. Um, so let me talk about what graduate school in STEM typically requires. So for a lot of STEM majors, you have to determine whether you want to do a master's or you're thinking about a PhD program. Now, a few schools, or a few departments rather, like my department here at the University of Kentucky, they do what I call the 2+3 model. So where if you want to do your PhD, you have to do your master's, which should be like 2 years, and then the 3 year outlines the PhD program. So a total of five, and 5 years is typically what a normal PhD program like outlines for. Now, me and you both know just because that's what's on paper doesn't mean that's necessarily how long it's going to take.
I mean, your undergrad should only take 4 years. Me, it took five. For you, it took what, six, seven?
7, but I mean, I started at community college. I spent probably an extra
Yeah.
year there than I should have. So probably mine should have been 6, but I also knocked out like 196 semester
Yeah.
units. So I did that, like, 7 years of coursework. Um, Graduate school is different in that the coursework aspect of it, if you do well in your upper division courses, don't let the coursework like feel like it's going to be too challenging. It should be challenging, but it's just going to be like that last year where you are taking 4 or 5 upper division courses, right? That
So for grad school, is it the same thing to where you take 12 units per semester, or is it just a couple classes? What's that like?
it's 9 units. That's what our school requires.
Okay.
9 units is considered a full time graduate student. So the units tend to be a little heavier in that you'll see. I don't know if you remember seeing things at Tech to where it was, um, it'd be a course that was listed as both like a 300 or 400 class and also like a 5 or 600 level class.
Yeah.
And then you'd be in the class and there'd be kids who are in grad school in the class with you while you're taking this as like a senior. Um,
Yeah, I remember for those classes, we'd get the normal homework, and then on top of that, the grad students would get two or three more problems that were a little more difficult. And if we wanted to, we could have tried it out, but if not, it wasn't required.
yeah. From the classes that I've seen, typically the graduate students have some research component to it. It's
Yeah.
write a paper about this, or do you have a presentation on that? There's something else they have to do, some project based thing to where that's like the only difference. So, is it more challenging? Of course, it's supposed to be. But I think anybody who does well in their senior year can find success in graduate school. Now, the big where things kind of weed people out and you see the burnout and the dropout is on the research component. Um, so, for like, let's talk about like the 2 years masters. Uh,
Okay.
Typically, that first year is mostly going to be, it should be taking your coursework, and then you start do what's called your lit review. So you're just reading papers, learning how to read them, outline them, make notes. You're building up like a knowledge base, and then you're planning some experiments to conduct during that summer to help you get your preliminary data. If you have a good advisor, like, okay, during your summer you're going to collect all your data, and then in the following fall semester, so your third semester, you're going to be working on compiling that into your graphics, and you're doing your data analysis, finding results. And then your fourth semester should be writing up those results formally, submitting your thesis, and defending your thesis.
Okay.
Um, that's the linear track if you're successful. Now, something along the way could derail it. A pandemic, in my case, um, shortage of supplies, issues with your advisors. So sometimes that's I can't just gloss over the issues with the advisors. Advisor fit is huge when it comes to graduate school. Um,
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna ask is when you're looking for an advisor, what do you think are probably the three biggest things you should look for?
uh, Communication, that's going to be,
Hmm.
I think, number one. So this could be even you could get a sense of how open they are before committing to the school. So it's, when I email them, are they answering my questions? How quickly of a response am I getting back? So like just communicating, kind of getting a vibe check from them. Like, is this somebody I feel I could learn from? And um, another thing you can't overlook is the funding. Where's their
Yeah.
funding coming from? How much money does this lab have? Some professors have millions of dollars in funding. They're on these huge projects. So, um, like I could say the project that I'm on now. I was talking to my advisor last week, and he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we might have to buy that. That I don't know, could be like 5 or 10 grand, but we'll look into buying that." In contrast, when I was doing my masters, at one point I asked for like, "Oh, hey, can I get like a $300 or $500 budget to go buy this biomass that we need?" And he was like, well, can you ask to see if we can get it donated? And, you know, it was a different thing. So like, but that's just because his current advisor has far more funding than my previous advisor.
Now I'm
So
assuming the more well funded projects are a little more competitive to get into.
yeah, they can be. That's definitely they can be. Sometimes it's just the professor's just more established.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, just but what's nice about them though is if you need something, it's yeah, let's go buy the parts that we need. Let's go buy the equipment that we actually need. And let's not try to Mickey Mouse or rig something up. Let's actually get it done to where this is the first and last build we need for this. Let's do it the right way rather than trying to Mickey Mouse it.
yeah.
So I would say that another thing, reach out to other graduate students uh, from that department, especially in the ask if they have people, try to talk to other people within his lab. Now you might say that could be difficult, so you could try just sending the cold email to them, looking on their every PI for the most part has a list of or web page showing their current graduate students. Um, it typically has an email that said, "Oh, hey, so and so, I see that you work for Dr. Johnson. I was wondering if you could give me some insights into what it's like working for him." Um, but you'll also want to see if the graduate school would be or that program would fly you out for their graduate recruitment trip. Um, our department does that. It happens like in the fall, or no, in like February. But you have to submit your application sometime during the fall semester. And I think last time they paid for I'm gonna guess like 5 to 10 students to come out. Some and like they're willing to pay for your airfare, your hotel, your travel funds. And when you come out, they typically they'll arrange tours. Every meal is going to be paid for, um, and that's a great opportunity to try to talk to the graduate students candidly. Now, you have to sit there and kind of talk and figure out who's the person that's going to give me the real information.
No, that still ties back into, reaching out when you're an undergrad is being proactive as to who you talk to and being more active in the community.
Can
That'll help you out in the long run.
you repeat the question? You kind of cut out there.
It wasn't a question. I just said it kind of just ties back into how you have to be more proactive in the people you reach out to when you're an undergrad, and you have to be more involved in your community to understand where you're at.
Yeah. Now, I'll be honest. When I came out on my recruitment trip to UK, at one point we went to a bar and we sat there, we had a beer. I think I was the only person out of the recruitment group drinking with one of the other graduate students there. And so the rest of the group left. The person who was designated driver for us is like, "Oh, hey, it's 10 o'clock. I got to go home. Drop you guys back off at your hotel." And like the other graduate's like, "Dude, if you want to have another beer with me, like, I'll drive you home later." I'm like, "All right, cool." And at that point, he's like, "Hey, this is the actual way things work here." you know. So when you
Yeah,
go, you're gonna
it's always superficial. When it's a group, it's always superficial, the amount of information that they give you.
yeah. So like in the department, everybody was like, "Oh, very, very welcoming," and not to say that they aren't welcoming.
Yeah.
Everybody's done nice, but it was everybody's best look. It was picture day. Right?
Yeah.
Everybody was dressed up in a sense. Um, and like he let me know like, "Oh, hey, this is the A, B, and C that goes on here." And so when we had students come last February, I was driving them around. I volunteered to chaperone them and drive them around from place to place for a couple nights. And I was like, "Hey guys, I will give you, if you ask me a question, I'm not going to give you what the department wants you to hear necessarily. I'm going to give you the actual information. So I'm not going to badmouth anybody willfully, but if you ask me a specific question, I'll give you a specific answer to it." And I just hope that moving forward, whatever organization you land at, when new students come in, you give them the actual, like, this is how things actually occur here.
Yeah.
Um, so that'd be the third thing is talking to students who are there, because some advisors have great reputations. Um, they're funded well. Their graduate students say, "Oh, this person's been ultra supportive in everything I've done. They did A, B, and C for me. It helped me with this and that." Well, other advisors, they don't have that reputation, and it's not something that I'm not even talking strictly from just my department, but that's something across universities as a whole. Um, I actually saw something the other day that said like a lot of like engineers tend to be like have a bit of a tism, to some extent, and engineers tend to
The
get along.
homie.
Yeah, the Kobe. That's a different. Uh, but they say like people who are maybe people who are like have that slight autism, like they tend to want to hang around people who have similar interests. Or
Yeah.
so when you have uh the student or the child of two like let's say academics, they will make the probability of that student maybe having some of their parents quirks goes up. So
Yeah.
you see it, I see it a lot in academia. And again, at this point, I've taken 250 semester units roundabout um, at all different levels of college. And you do see it. There's a lot of professors who are just quiet and reserved and introverted. Talking and presenting isn't their natural state. Um, they could
Yeah,
be a
once
little,
you give them that line of what their interest is, that you just won't shut them up after that.
yeah. But then when you try to talk to them about something adjacent to what they're interested, like, "Oh, okie dokie, well, I'm gonna go talk to somebody else." Like,
Yeah.
it's hard for them just to shoot the breeze. And so uh, uh, with your advisor, some people are amazing, but other people, they haven't taken the time to really work past that. And I'm not saying every advisor has it, but some who have it, like, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that can make them a great researcher but it can also just hinder their communication skills. So you really got to communicate to see, uh, is this somebody who I feel comfortable talking with.
Yeah.
Um, Now, another thing about graduate school that maybe a lot of people don't know about is something I didn't know about until I got like my first mentor was paying for graduate school.
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. Do you have to take out any loans, or do you have to work on the side to pay for classes? How does that work?
Yes, is the general answer. I'd say to all that, but it depends. Um, so if you're going for the STEM majors, so chemistry, biology, math, engineering, another other subsequent other ones, but we'll just stick to those. You're typically, if you're going to a well-funded program, you'll have a full ride scholarship, so nothing out of pocket for that. Maybe a few $100 in like miscellaneous like fees for to use the gym, or health fees, stuff that aren't covered by your scholarship. But then you also get what's called a stipend. A stipend is essentially like a salary, um, depending on where you're at, and again how well your department's funded is going to dictate how big your stipend is. So there's departments here at the University of Kentucky that are making like 28,000, where
Oh
our
shit.
department for PhD students are getting 22,000
A year?
a year.
Fuck. I'm
Yeah.
not below poverty way? God damn.
Now we do get our health benefits fully paid for, our health
Okay.
insurance.
You
We
better
don't
with
we
that
don't get
wage.
dental. We have to opt into dental for like $200. Um, but you're going to get free healthcare. And if you go through our university has its own medical school, so there's tend to be ways to get some things paid for. Um, but you're gonna have that full scholarship, and you're gonna be making some money a year. Now, if you're living in a 4-bedroom house with 3 other roommates, and everybody's paying $500 a month, like, yeah, you could probably get by without having to take out loans. I personally have 2 dogs. I like my dogs to have a yard. It costs me a little bit more, so I have to take loans out to kind of bridge the gap. Um, Now, if you're in your senior, or it's too late for those in your senior year, but if you're going into your senior year, so you're a junior right now, there's something called the NSF GRFP, National Science Foundation Graduate Research Readiness, Graduate Research Fellowship Program. There we go, GRFP. Um, it's something you can apply for uh, as an undergrad as many times as you'd like. If you get awarded it, it's quite competitive. But if you get awarded it, you get 3 years of, like, I think it's now $37,000 or $38,000 a year in a stipend, and full tuition covered.
No shit.
So
It's a
this
little bit
could,
more money in your pocket.
yeah, and this could be huge because let's say you applied to just nothing but these top 10 engineering schools, and just highly competitive, you didn't get in. Uh, if you get awarded the NSFGRFP, let's say I think it comes out in like April. Um, you could email one of those professors who you're interested in, say, hey, I was wondering if you'd be able to take me on. I just got awarded the GRFP. At that point, you are nearly like a zero cost applicant to them.
Oh
Uh,
shit.
like, they'll still have to find money to pay for your research, but as far as your tuition, your stipend, that stuff they don't need to cover. So it's you're at that point you're a much less of a financial burden on them. And graduate students are the lifeblood of any university. They
Yeah.
need us to do the research that brings in all the grant money. Um, and then it's also part of it, what your stipend will be. You'll either get offered a RA ship, research um, assistantship, research assistant, or a TA, teaching assistant position. Ideally, you'd want an RA because that just means you're doing stuff in the lab, and typically it's stuff for your project. They could assign you, hey, I need you to work, help out. You need to help out Gary with this. You might get assigned to something else, but typically it's something that, oh, hey, go just work on your project. Do this for your project. Um, if you get a TA ship, you need to go teach a class, which anybody who's taking college classes has probably had a TA teach some class at some point. Um, And to me, that's the downside of a big college. Is one, as undergrad, it's never ideal to have a TA because it all depends on how well they were taught, and they haven't had the teaching experience to have a polished presentation yet. So it could be kind of tough. Um,
I would imagine it's also time consuming for the graduate students simply because they have to grade papers and all that. And that's not part of their research. They have to be sitting there grading papers, and then on top of that, have to do schoolwork and research work, and it's I bet it's tough for them.
oh yeah, like that's why I'm super grateful that we're full RA ships here at the Biosystem and Ag Engineering Department at UK. Um, Not every department offers that, so other departments might get paid more, but it's a TA ship rather than an RA ship.
Yeah,
Um, so that's something to consider when you're getting two offers, and one's and you're like, oh hey, I like both of these universities. I think both of these labs are interesting. I like both of the PIs. See what the offer is. If it's an RA ship or a TA ship, I would lean towards the RA ship because you don't have to do that teaching component.
yeah.
Now, a little caveat here, a little caveat
Chavit. My
uh,
God, that dude's gonna follow me forever.
is if you're thinking about becoming a professor, if you're considering a life in academia yourself, uh, the TA ship will give you that teaching experience if you haven't already gotten that elsewhere. Um,
Or you can
Now,
try teaching at a high school.
um, what I'd recommend though is if you're at a place where you're doing an RA ship and you're interested in teaching, talk with your advisor to see if there's a class you could teach. Ask for like 2 1 week sessions, right? So say, hey, Dr. So and so, I see that you're teaching this class. I was wondering if I could possibly teach 1 week. You can tell me what topics to prepare for. I'll prepare slides um, and see if I could teach, the 2 lectures that week, get feedback, and then come back like a month later to teach another week. I think that's going to be the most beneficial to you doing that. I would even try to find a professor who teaches the same class multiple times to see, because this way, if you give once you give the same lecture 3 or 4 times, it's pretty
Yeah.
polished, right? You you
Yeah.
you know what works, you know what doesn't. You find your cadence, you find your rhythm. So if you have the opportunity to say, hey, okay, I'll go to the Monday lab, I'll give my 40 minute, my 20 minute pre lab lecture to them. I'll get notes and I'll present that to the Tuesday lab. Like uh, that's going to give you that chance to go through like rapid development of your presentation skills. So uh, you can still get teaching experience if you're an RA, but that's something you have to go seek.
Yeah.
Um, Now, something Julian brought up earlier was the sense of either burnout at the end of your college career or just the wanting to make money.
Yeah. Which
So
is it's a tough choice in the sense that you still want to further your education, because even having a career, you'll still want to get your master's degree, even though you didn't go for it right after your bachelor's. It's something that on paper looks really good, and in the long run, it's going to help you out a lot.
now again, when we say masters, that's a lot of broad things. That could be your MBA.
Yeah,
Typically, if you're going to get your master's of business arts, that's something you could probably do in like a night school type of arena. Um, you don't need to go back to school full time for that. That's something a lot of people kind of do on the part time. Um, However, uh, you've expressed interest in like going back for potentially like a aerospace or some other engineering subdiscipline type of degree where you would need to go to school, be there a couple days a week. Now, this is where the tricky part is. If Julian decides to go back full time, leave his job to pursue school, he's gonna have to go back for the engineering money he's making right now, which we'll say is a multiplier of what I make.
yeah,
I don't want to come out there, but going from that, to your comfort, you could go buy whatever, charge it to, oh, hey, I gotta wait to I have to wait till this check clears before I can write my rent check. And, you know, um, yeah, I still got to apply for FAFSA because I need to take out some student loans to bridge the gap here. It's substantially more difficult to return to grad school after you've been working in industry
Yeah.
if they're not if your company isn't willing to pay you and do some like hybrid to where you're part-time student, part-time worker for them, and they're funding you so you don't have to rely on the school's funds to get your degree.
Yeah, that's another thing that I really thought about when I was applying to jobs is what place would give me, or what place would be most beneficial for me if I wanted to do my master's. Luckily, that the place that I'm at now, they are willing to pay for my master's, and you can take one or two classes here or there. Or I've heard of some people that actually move out to the place where the college is at, and they just work from home the most of the time. So there are places that will work with your schedule, and that'll kind of, yeah, try and help you get through school, but it's hard to find those places.
Okay. And something I'll throw into this is that there's within STEM majors, there's typically two types of masters. There's a plan A or track A or a plan B. Track A is typically your research. You come here, like I said, take 2 semesters, full semesters of coursework, maybe part time on a third. During the summer, you're getting your data. In the summer and fall, you're getting your data. Fall and spring, you're analyzing and you write it up and present it. There's also a plan B, which is known as a terminal degree, which is kind of messed up if you think that it's a terminal and plan B. I remember they were talking
That's
about
it for
that.
you, buddy.
Eh, and they say it's a terminal degree because it kind of terminates your academic career.
Okay.
So it's something that you would go for. Like, I think you don't have any ambition right now of going for eventually a PhD.
Not a PhD. I don't think so.
Right? Yeah. So a lot of people, like, when they go back, like, okay, I'm going back for my master's, especially like in a STEM field, like, okay, I want to get the experience, or I want to have the time to explore this, but I want the certificate, I want the degree, but I can't commit to like the full research component of it. You could enroll in what's called a plan B, um, a master's, to where it's more like a intensive, rather than like a research thesis. You submit something that you've written up based off all the literature review. It's kind of like a big research project, but without like the lab research. It's not going on collecting data. It's you kind of analyzing and writing it up. Um, Typically, those aren't funded though. Those are something you would have to fund yourself or have your workplace funding it. Uh, the university is not going to typically pay for you to do that, to bring you in that. Now, some students fall back, they have a trip up in their academic career and they decide, hey, I'm just having a hard time doing this. And then their advisor will be like, okay, let's switch you to a plan B. We'll kind of help you wrap this up and we'll get you out of here. The research aspect isn't for you. And just know that even though you'll still get a master's from us, it's not going to be one that you'll be able to go on and get a PhD from later. Like with just the additional 3 years, you'd pretty much have to start back at square one of a PhD, looking at another 5 year process.
Yeah.
So um, that's another option um, for students that take, and that's going to be more similar to like people going in the MBA, the Plan B. It's more on track of that, and that it's as far as what the work entails. Um, So yeah, I think that's the big things to consider. If you're thinking about graduate school, fully consider it, but because you shouldn't immediately say, "Well, it's not for me. I'm not good enough to go to graduate school." If you're finding success in your senior year, your junior year, I believe you probably have uh, the wherewithal to do well. You know, if you're having a, let's say, plus or minus, if you're 3.5, 3.3 and above, I'd say really 3.5 and above consistently, you probably have enough academic talent to do well. I know, like, God, the smartest professor I know, he said his undergrad was like a 3.0. That's just because he took so many classes that he wasn't interested in. And
Oh
now that
shit.
he's able to focus on what he likes doing, he's able to
Yeah.
succeed. And that's the other thing. Just because you have a 4.0 doesn't mean you're going to be a great graduate student either. You've learned to do well in school, and this is a different way of thinking. It's a different depth of thinking. Um, But I immediately, when I first started community college, I didn't think graduate school was for me. I was like, oh, like how can I afford to do that? I didn't think I was good enough. Um, and I think you shouldn't immediately eliminate it as a possibility, but it shouldn't be your default to go to graduate school either. You really need to see what it's like for you, and a way to kind of vet that is try to find a lab during your undergrad you could work in. This will give you exposure to graduate students. You could talk to that advisor or that PI to see what they think. They'll get a sense of who you are, what you offer. Um, so you really got to think about it your junior year, because your senior year you'll need to apply. So I'd say that summer between your junior year and senior year, best time to take the time. Okay, I'll spend a couple weeks really vetting this out. Send some emails out. Hey, I see the research you're doing. I'm interested. Would you be willing to get on Zoom and talk for 20 minutes? You know, I think nowadays that's far more. Uh, People are far
Acceptable.
acceptable. Uh,
Yeah.
they'll be willing to jump on, talk to you for 10 or 15 minutes, but like read some of the research. Oh, I love the work you did here. Oh, I saw one of your graduate students just published this. Show them that you're actually reading. Um, inquire if they have a recruitment trip you could possibly go to. Look into the NSF as a possible funding source, because that could be your golden ticket into these places. Um, and Yeah, that's the big thing. It's it's going to be challenging. It's different, um, but you got to see what's your driving force. If it's just your default of I'm going to continue to go to school, I'm not ready to work. Um, Maybe just try to find some entry level job to help you get perspective of what you want to do. Um, but It's something you shouldn't immediately eliminate as an opportunity from yourself. Um, and Yeah, just start sending those emails. You have to be proactive about it and getting that, and that's going to pay a lot of dividends once you actually get to the place if you've already communicated and networked to some extent.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
And the other thing during this time, take the what's it called, the FE exam.
Oh yes. Yes, take the FE exam.
If you're in your junior year, plan on taking your FE exam sometime during like the fall semester of your senior year. If you're in your senior year, take it at some point. If not the
Yeah.
fall, that's like take it before you graduate. We're lucky enough our undergrad institution required it to graduate. Um, but I've seen so many people who, like, I know somebody, they already have their PhD and they haven't taken the FE once, and they've tried studying for it and like, oh man, there's so much I got to like kind of relearn. It
Yeah.
will never be easier than right now to take the FE exam. And not to say it's an
Yeah.
easy test, but it'll never be easier because there's so much stuff that you just have to refresh rather than relearn.
So for context, a lot of people take the FE exam as something that is proven that you are an engineer more so than your degrees. They believe that once you pass the FE exam, you you understand the concept of what that engineering branch entails.
Yeah, because we've all taken classes to where you learn how to survive the class.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, I've seen this professor's old exams. I know how they tend to ask the questions, and if long as I kind of put something along the lines, I'll get a good enough
Hmm.
grade to pass. I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. At some point, everybody's guilty of just surviving a class.
Yeah.
The FE kind of shows the people who took the time to really let it marinate and they actually learned the material. Now you don't need to memorize everything. You have a PDF you can search from. It's a 6 hour test, I
Just about,
believe,
yeah.
but you get to take one break at some point in the middle. Um, uh, it's a challenging exam, but take it your senior year.
Yeah.
You'll thank us later if you wait. Oh, I'll wait. Nobody's gonna care if you fail it. Like they're not. You don't have to report that necessarily to your. Oh, hey, I took the FE, I failed it. No, just don't put it on your resume. But if you
Yeah.
passed it, if they're comparing two resumes and one says FE exam, that I passed the FE exam, the other one doesn't. To a lot of uh, hiring committees, that's going to be like, oh, hey, this person's actually proven it outside of a classroom, outside of
To
just that day. Um,
to
Learn.
some people, they even weigh it more than getting a master's degree. Obviously, having a master's degree is good and it does help, but they put a little bit more weight if you have your FE exam on it.
Yeah. So reach out to potential labs, talk to the PIs, talk to the students, try to go on the recruitment trips. Figure out if there's something you're truly passionate that you really want to do a deep dive on. There's nothing wrong with like maybe taking a year after your undergrad to kind of refresh and get out there to see what you're passionate about. But while you're doing that, apply to the NSF GRFP. See if you can get that funding. It'll make your life so much easier once you're here. Um, I'll probably think of some stuff I want to bring up later. If there's something you would like to ask specifically about grad school, let us know. Drop us a comment. I'll be happy to address it.
Yeah, and thanks everybody. Like and subscribe to the video, and take care, everyone.